Hey everybody, Mature Simmer here. It's a beautiful day here in southern England, which it basically always is in this VFR series. So, welcome to another leg. We're here for leg 28. Before we get going, just give you a view of where we'll be heading. So, we're over here on the Isle of Wight at Bumbridge Airport. And we've got 11 waypoints that are going to get us over here to Paris. So the flight distance on this leg is 307 nautical miles compared to the 171. If you followed the series at all, you understand that, yeah, we're doing a lot of flying. It's not direct because, again, we are touring, not simply flying around. And what that means then is that we are obviously then going to take a meandering approach. As I've said a few times, but haven't said in a while, so I'm going to cover that a little bit here. The set of flight plans, 234 legs that we're following here, 115,000 plus nautical miles, 25,000 nautical miles to circumnavigate the globe. So we're going over nearly 5 times around the Earth in the total flying we're going to be doing here. And that is because we are enjoying learning and seeing things around the world. So if that's what you're looking to do, you are in the right place. So let's go ahead and get ourselves started up here. We want this to get to about 13. Put this in low idle. So we will do that. Obviously, we're hoping the ITT won't get very far. Yeah, usually it goes up, gets in the yellow, but then starts to come back down. So I think the key, I used to have some problems with it for several episodes, but yeah, it's remembering to get the propeller up and not have it on feather that really kind of gets us to the right location for that. So at this point, we are started. We are good. We get our gyros going. We're going to get our lights going. And that will, move things along there. But we'll get our pitot, we'll get our fuel selector on, we'll get our auxiliary BP there, we'll get our radios turned on, because those take a little bit of time, bleed to auto, air conditioning on, fan flow to auto, all of those things working well. We've got everything off here. Get our EFIS master turned on. Just trying to get things ready to move. Get our autopilot going. That will run through its test and so forth. And, the first thing we look for on the internal air temperature is that it is going up above the external air temperature that we have there, which, again, it also is. Typically flying, we start out at, say, 2,500 feet. So we're going to do that. Climbing at about 800 feet. And we will take a look here at, we don't have any barometer settings, so we're going to do the old set it manually. We have that. So we're going to go back here now, get our flight plan, import from a file. That will go from file we have. And again, we've got our airports with 11 waypoints. Get that going. And we should be good here. So we've got our SayIntentions so that we can use the tour tuner, but we're also trying to get a little bit of credit with them. So we're going to just go ahead and try to get the IFR or VFR clearance here. Center November 1 at 901 Mike Alpha requesting VFR 2,500 feet to Paris.
November 1 Mike Alpha, negative. Remain outside controlled airspace. Squawk conspicuity and free call. London information for further assistance while VFR.
All right, so they don't like us, which is fine. But, you know, we'll try to get that. I mean, I think we have a flight ID. I don't need anything from them. So, you know, there is that piece. Whoops, we want nav. We're going to change this to GPS. That arms the nav. You can see we're going to have about 60 kilometers to go. And at this point, other than getting the trim set, we'll dial that up, get our flaps down, as always, and we are good to go. 68. We're seeing some stuff there. We'll go here, get to terrain. Obviously, we're not above anything yet, so that all works. So we are going to head out. So we're here. You know, everything's kind of a grass parking, but this is the parking locations here. We're going to head that way, go down the runway, turn around, and head out that way. Just, I don't know, heading out toward the water, I think makes more sense, taking off over the town than the other direction, unless we see something unexpected. But parking brake is off. Throttling up. Hopefully, we'll start moving soon. Can hear the engine spooling up a little faster. So we'll get going. But yeah, this is a series I'm really, really enjoying. I've loved it from the start. You know, some legs are a little more dull than others. This one, you know, again, going from England along the coast of France, you can probably guess. One of the other things that has come up, the creator of these flight plans really is a history buff, loves history, so you can imagine we're going to be dealing with a lot of World War II battlefields, things like that, while we're sticking in Europe and so forth. You know, obviously, as we get to other areas of the world, we'll see what they're able to share with us. Some of the things are limited to what's available in the sim. Like, obviously, if you can't see certain things or, you know, can't identify where they are, all they can do is get us in the vicinity. But, you know, they've done an excellent job with their own narrative. But the SayIntentions Tour Tuner has just added such depth to the things, and I am just tickled pink that in the last 3 or 4 legs we've finally been able to again use it as intended, where Sarah will automatically tell us as we get to a waypoint interesting facts about it, and the amount of additional information that I would have never known or thought to ask for has just been really, really incredible. So we're going to pop back in here to the cockpit and just get ourselves moving along. But pretty short airport here. We'll take a look at the narrative before we take off, but I think, like many of them, he doesn't really have a whole lot of preamble or extra things for us to consider. But here we are at the end of runway 12, I believe. So we'll get turned around. And we always fly on perfect weather, clear skies, because again, this isn't a flight thing as much as it is just we're looking and proceeding. and just enjoying the world that we're going through. So yes, nothing to do ahead of time, and the first waypoint, as we said, is 60 kilometers away, so we're probably not going to call in to Sarah for a bit, but let's get airborne. So, a little bit of a delay as always, you know, to get things going. We're throttled up pretty nicely. Always a bit of a challenge, because I just use a stick. I don't have a yoke, so it's, you know, and no rudder pedals, so it's a little bit more work. But again, we're just barely up to speed before we run out of the runway, so let's hope we can clear the treetops. We should be fine, but we will get there, get over the city. Get out over the water again is the important thing, because, you know, then we're in good shape. We will now get the yaw damper on, we will get the autopilot, and we will arm the climb, and we are on our way. So we're going to turn, we're going to head south, and so the narrative begins. Head south across the English Channel to the Gatteville lighthouse on the tip of the Cotentin Peninsula. So that is what we are doing, and it stops mid-sentence before we get to the other point. But, yeah, not sure. Obviously, you know, this is, I think, just part of the Isle here. So we're just going down the coast there. You know, but so we can't see France yet. Now, again, we're only at 600 feet. Again, yellow's 500 to 1,000. Green becomes over 1,000 away. And then obviously it completely goes away later. So, you know, now we'll be heading less toward the island as we get onto our path. But what I typically like to do is kind of position us that way so you can see out the window over the water. It doesn't make that much sense right now. But, you know, we'll climb here in the, I forget what time I set this to, but I think it's like 10:30. I usually try to do it like mid-morning, midday, so that regardless of how many hours we end up flying, we have daylight. We're obviously not wanting to go fly over places at night in this series. Just see a bunch of lights, like we're trying to see some stuff. So, we're within 1,000 feet, but you can see everything's kind of, the yellows are fading away, and we will shortly have nothing but green or black, which means we are quite high above, and I don't know that there's any elevation in the area of France we're going to be going to that's going to challenge us to go any higher than 2,500 feet. But trying to stick with the VFR rules that, you know, you typically want to be at some increment of 500 when we're flying. But this is not a thin part of the English Channel. We had crossed over into England in that space several legs ago. So if you're interested about our tour around the UK, Scotland, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, all of that, go back, watch those other legs. You know, I'd really encourage you, if you just enjoy VFR flying at all, or are just someone interested in tourism and just seeing sights around the world, which is what attracted me to this series when I saw it, especially when I realized the author had taken all this time to give us a 248-page document, of which we're on page 31 only here at this point. So there is just a lot of information here. So it is pretty wondrous. But I'm really looking forward to it. Definitely, you know, getting to places I've not been to. I've only been to Europe once in my life. Or, well, I shouldn't say once. I've only been to one place, which is Berlin, Germany. which I think we've already passed through, so I'm not expecting any kind of return there. So I think we're done with that location. As we came over to England, we were doing that as we came over from Russia. But I'm aware of other places. I've seen them in movies and travel shows and whatever. Definitely, I'd love to get to Paris in person. That's on my intended list. Lord willing, that will happen. But in the meantime, this is my best option. So let's see if we call Sarah, if we can get her connected, because that way everything's automated after that. Sarah, good morning.
Since
Can you
there aren't any
please...
major landmarks right beneath us, let me tell you about the closest airstrip, Stockbridge Airstrip, Whitwell. This little gem is a grass airstrip on the Isle of Wight, mostly used by light aircraft and gliders. It's the kind of place where pilots swap stories about their most questionable landings and where sheep occasionally serve as runway inspectors. The Isle of Wight itself is famous for its aviation history, especially during World War II, when it played a role in coastal defense. The airstrip is a favorite among hobby pilots who love the challenge of a short, rustic runway. Think of it as the aviation equivalent of parallel parking on a hill. Good morning. What can I help you with today?
Alright, so I'm trying to get my throttle set, and I realized, I guess, I hadn't put my flaps up yet, so I moved it up like, oh, we're good. I also probably haven't put our gear up. I have not. So all in all, we've been dragging ourselves across the channel here, so a little bit of sloppy starting, which is atypical for me. I'm usually pretty good at that, but I saw, we were only going 160. I'm like, we've got 40 nautical miles to go. Let's get going. So yeah, sometimes Sarah will make a comment if she's not busy doing something, so that's the other reason I want to get this loaded, because she'll usually stay quiet then. Sarah, good morning. Would you please load VFR TBM Around the World Tour Leg 28?
Good morning. Loading the VFR TBM Around the World Tour Leg 28 for us. Our first stop is Gatteville Lighthouse, about 80 kilometers ahead. Get ready for some incredible views and stories along the way.
All right. So, I'm going to go ahead, kind of settle into the pattern that I always do. There's a lot of flying, as we've talked about, 115,000 nautical miles.
Ryanair 112 uniform contact London Control on 134.905.
Yeah, we may get a little bit of this, but eventually I'm sure center will change. But as we get further away, we obviously won't be hearing London traffic and so forth. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, as chatty as I am, if you watch anything else on the channel, yeah, I'm not that chatty. I'm not going to be talking for thousands of hours or however long this takes, because I don't have anything more interesting to say than what Sarah's going to share. So as we get close, we'll talk about it. I'll give you, any input I have, my reaction to what we've learned, and so forth. Share the narrative and so forth. But we've got 38 nautical miles. We're going to keep the view here. It's going to be a lot of water for this first leg. And I will talk to you in a bit. Center, November 1 Mike Alpha, requesting VFR to Paris.
November 1 Mike Alpha, cleared VFR to Paris. Maintain VFR. Own navigation. Climb altitude 2,500 feet if desired. QNH 990 hectopascals.
Alright, so now we've got that going. The only benefit we get there, potentially, is, you know, there's some tracking that SayIntentions does for, you know, little badges and stuff, and all this VFR flying I've been doing, I've only gotten like 9 hours of credit, so I've been trying to figure that out. Last episode, we were doing this as well, but then it never closed, and I was told, yeah, I need to basically call and let them know that, hey, I'm taxiing on my own, and so forth. So I'm going to change to CTAF now, which I think is going to stay the same. But that will allow us to make those calls and then hopefully stay off the air. Alright, we're coming up on the coast. Not sure if that's the location. We're kind of heading toward that, but normally we'd be kind of right at it, but I'm going to assume that that is where we're headed.
At our 12 o'clock, about 6 kilometers out, you'll see the Gatteville lighthouse. This towering structure was completed in 1835 and stands at an impressive 75 meters, making it one of the tallest traditional lighthouses in the world. Built to guide ships safely past the treacherous Barfleur rocks, it flashes its light every 10 seconds, like a maritime disco ball, but with fewer sailors dancing. The lighthouse has 365 steps, one for every day of the year. So if you ever feel like combining sightseeing with a workout, this is the place. Local legend says the lighthouse keepers used to compete to see who could climb it the fastest. Talk about cardio. Our next stop is Cherbourg.
All right, so about 13 miles left there. So again, mid-sentence, we've got then turn west to the port city of Cherbourg, one of the earliest targets of Allied forces after the D-Day landings, as the securing of a port was vital to keeping the Allied armies supplied. But we're headed there along the coast, as it said, going a little bit west, so, it'll be probably in this area here, and then we're going to kind of turn right around and start heading back east most of the rest of the way.
At our 10 o'clock, about 5 kilometers away, you'll spot Cherbourg. This port city has been a strategic naval base since the days of Napoleon, who actually ordered the construction of its massive artificial harbor in the early 19th century. During World War II, Cherbourg was a major objective for Allied forces after D-Day, with its capture allowing the Allies to bring in much-needed supplies. The city is also famous for its umbrella factory, which inspired the classic French film, The Umbrellas of Cherbourg. And here's something. The Titanic made its last stop here before heading across the Atlantic. So if you see any icebergs, let me know. Our next stop is Utah Beach.
All right, so again, sometimes she'll give us that info, sometimes she won't. So as you heard, turn southeast now to the area behind Utah Beach, one of the landing sites for U.S. troops. And that's a little bit longer because, we got to come back, so we're basically passing up where we came across to the lighthouse, and then, heading still along the coast, but it'll be a little bit inland, and we'll get there in a little under 20 nautical miles. All right, we're coming up there. You can see we've got about 6 miles to go. Yeah, I don't know that I realized there was like this inlet or whatever here. Not sure if that's where the beaches are clustered around. We'll find out in a moment, obviously. But yeah, the other thing I wanted to share is you may be like, well, we went over all that water, you left it, why not cut that out? Again, if you're newer to the series, with VFR, the whole point is it's a visual flight. People enjoy that for just seeing what there is to see, and so I include every moment that I can, unless I have to cut out because of some sort of a technical glitch or something, or I cough and don't mute it, this, that, so that you're not, troubled with that. But we're coming up here.
At our 2 o'clock, about 4 kilometers away is Utah Beach. This stretch of sand was one of the 5 landing beaches during the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. American forces landed here, facing less resistance than at some of the other beaches. But it was still a tense and dangerous operation. The beach is now home to several monuments and a museum, preserving the memory of those who fought and fell here. If you look closely, you might spot remnants of old German bunkers, now slowly being reclaimed by the dunes. Nature's way of saying, nice try, concrete. Here's something. The codename Utah was chosen at random, but it stuck, and now it's a symbol of liberation. Our next stop is Omaha Beach, just 15 kilometers away.
So that is our next point. Continue east across the inlet to Omaha Beach. The first 20 minutes or so of the movie Saving Private Ryan breathtakingly depict the insanity and horror that occurred here on June 6, 1944. You're right there. So it looks like basically they were on either side of this inlet here. So, but yeah, it looks like there's a couple rivers that come in. But, yeah, I'm guessing it's right around there. And then we're going to turn a little bit to the south as we continue on. But she'll be popping in shortly. I think I have these set at 3 miles instead of 4, so you got to get a little closer before she says anything. But yeah, it's likely this expanse here.
At our 3 o'clock, just 3 kilometers away, is Omaha Beach. This is one of the most famous sites from D-Day, June 6, 1944. American troops landed here and faced some of the fiercest resistance of the entire Normandy invasion. The bluffs overlooking the beach made it a tough spot to capture, and you can still see remnants of German bunkers and fortifications from the air. Today, the beach is peaceful, but it's hard not to imagine the chaos and bravery that unfolded here. There's a massive American cemetery nearby, with thousands of white crosses, a sight that really puts the scale of history into perspective. Here's something. The opening scene of Saving Private Ryan was inspired by what happened right here. Our next stop is Bayeux, just 25 kilometers away.
Right, so we have continue east along the beach and a few miles inland to the town of Bayeux, home of the famed 68-meter Bayeux Tapestry, an 11th century tapestry depicting the 1066 Norman invasion of England. So, we'll be back in a couple minutes.
At our 3 o'clock, about 5 kilometers away, is Bayeux. This charming town is famous for the Bayeux tapestry, an embroidered cloth nearly 70 meters long that tells the story of the Norman conquest of England in 1066. The tapestry is basically a medieval comic strip, minus the superheroes, unless you count William the Conqueror. Bayeux was also the first major town liberated by the Allies after D-Day, and its cathedral, built in the 11th century, is a stunning example of Norman architecture. The town managed to escape major destruction during World War II. So much of its old world charm remains intact. Here's something. The Bayeux tapestry is so detailed, you can spot tiny embroidered horses with some serious medieval hairdos. Our next stop is Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches, just 16 kilometers away.
All right, so we're heading back toward the coast, obviously, to get to beaches. And I think, yeah, not much there. Turn back northeast to the coast and Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches, where British and Canadian troops made their landings. And after that, still a little bit of a short leg, but we're basically going to be turning a good 90 degrees away from the coast and heading inland, but then we'll be kind of skirting the coast for the leg after that. But we'll deal with all that as we continue on. But, you know, definitely one of these, like, I would love to visit the cemetery at Normandy. I'm a history buff as well, and you know, really grateful for what everybody did and what they had to endure to, you know, fight against
At our 5
the
o'clock,
groups
about
there.
5 kilometers away, you'll see Gold, Juno, and Sword beaches. These 3 beaches were the landing sites for British and Canadian forces during D-Day on June 6, 1944. The landings here were crucial for establishing a foothold in Normandy, and the soldiers faced everything from rough seas to fortified German defenses. Today you can still spot remnants of Mulberry harbors, those massive floating docks that were towed across the channel to unload supplies. The beaches now are peaceful, but every grain of sand has a story to tell, some of them probably about soggy boots and British tea rations. Here's something. The Canadians at Juno Beach advanced further inland on D-Day than any other Allied force. Our next stop is Caen.
Okay, so a little bit longer, but not super long. So you can see just barely over 10 nautical miles. But yes, a few miles inland takes us to Caen. Slated for capture late on D-Day, stiff German resistance prevented its capture until July 9th, by which time nearly 70% of the city had been destroyed in the fighting. But yeah, what I was saying is just, yeah, you know, really owing a debt to the men and women that were involved in, you know, World War II and everything and the horribleness that happened due to, you know, unfortunately, the German leadership saying, yeah, we're going to try to take over the whole world and enforce our rule and so forth. But, you know, you've got very nice fields and towns spread out here now, over 75 years after that situation. Hopefully something that never recurs again in any format, so in any place in the world. But we're getting there. And then after this, all the legs are relatively long, so you're going to have long stretches of just being able to enjoy the view without, you know, my thoughts to mingle with yours. But let's wait and see what she tells us here about Caen.
At our 2 o'clock, about 6 kilometers away is Caen. This city is famous for its massive castle built by William the Conqueror around 1060. Yes, the same guy who later decided England needed a new management team. The castle has survived centuries of battles, including heavy bombing during World War II, and today it's home to museums and even the occasional medieval festival. Chainmail not required, but highly encouraged. Caen is also known for its beautiful abbeys, which William and his wife Matilda built as a sort of medieval apology to the Pope for being cousins when they got married. Awkward family reunions, anyone? The city played a key role in the Battle of Normandy, and you can still spot scars from the fighting if you look closely. Here's something. Caen is also the birthplace of the famous mathematician Pierre-Simon Laplace, who probably would have loved calculating our flight path.
All right, so this time she didn't give away where we're headed, so let's explain where we're going to next. As you can see, a little under 30 miles away. But we're going to turn northeast now to the Pont du Normandie, across the mouth of the River Seine. Then it goes on to the next thing. So the River Seine, if you're unfamiliar, is the one that flows through Paris. So it looks like it's a little bit northwest, the outlet there, and going into the English Channel. But it's a little bit northwest of Paris, and we'll get to that bridge. Pont is bridge in French, by the way, so it's the Bridge of Normandy is what the translation of that is. And we'll do that, and then we'll head east, and we'll continue the sentence that I was starting to read, and then realized, oh wait, it's telling us about the next stop. So I'll see you in a bit. All right, coming up on the bridge here. So there you can see it.
At
So
our
the
5
River
o'clock,
Seine.
about 5 kilometers away, you'll spot the Pont du Normandie. This impressive cable-stayed bridge spans the Seine River and was completed in 1995. At the time, it held the record for the longest cable-stayed bridge in the world, stretching a whopping 2,143 meters. The bridge is a marvel of engineering, with pylons that soar to 14 meters high, taller than the Statue of Liberty. Drivers crossing it get a spectacular view, but from up here we get the VIP treatment. Legend has it the construction workers had to battle fierce winds and more than a few stubborn seagulls to get it finished. Our next stop is Rouen. It's 56 kilometers away.
All right, so almost 32 miles. But as you heard, then head east to the marshalling yards of Rouen, against which B-17s of the U.S. 8th Air Force flew their first mission in August of 1942. All right, we're coming up on Rouen. And then we're going to head sharply south.
At our 4 o'clock, about 6 kilometers away, is Rouen. This city is famous for its stunning Gothic cathedral, which was painted more than 30 times by Claude Monet. He was basically obsessed with how the light hit those spires. Rouen is also where Joan of Arc met her fate in 1431, and there's a modern church and memorial dedicated to her right in the city center. The medieval streets are so twisty and narrow that even GPS sometimes gives up and just says, "Good luck." The city was heavily bombed during World War II, but many historic buildings survived or were painstakingly restored. Here's something. The cathedral's tower was the tallest building in the world for a brief moment in the 19th century. Take that Eiffel Tower up. Our next stop is Chartres Cathedral.
Lots of train tracks, so this is clearly a major train hub here in France. That is crazy. But I'm sure that's also partially why maybe all these tracks weren't there, but a good portion probably were. And that may have been why it was a key location that the Allies wanted to capture, so that they would have access to all those rail lines and obviously what they connect to. So as it said, then we are going to turn south now for the city of Chartres and Chartres Cathedral. There has been a cathedral on this site since at least the 4th century, with the current building completed in 1220. The flying buttress architecture provides external support for the walls and allows the use of larger stained glass windows. So I'll see you in a bit. This one will be a little bit longer because we've got over 50 miles to go, but enjoy the French countryside as we head south into France. All right, so we're coming up here on Chartres in
At our
2.5
1 o'clock,
miles.
about 5 kilometers away, you'll spot the magnificent
there's the
Chartres
Cathedral.
Built mostly between 1194 and 1220, this Gothic masterpiece is famous for its stunning stained glass windows, over 150 of them. Pilgrims have been flocking here for centuries, sometimes just to see the Sancta Camisa, a relic said to be the tunic worn by the Virgin Mary. The cathedral's 2 spires are a study in architectural evolution. One is a classic 12th century Romanesque, the other a flamboyant 16th century Gothic.
Little airport, too.
And here's something. The labyrinth on the floor was once used by monks for meditative walks, kind of like a medieval version of a stress ball.
All right, and our last location, we're heading northeast to central Paris and more POIs than I could possibly list. Then on to Le Bourget Airport, where Charles Lindbergh landed after his famous solo New York to Paris flight in 1927. Paris is definitely one of those cities you'll want to take a smaller airplane up for a slow, low-flying tour. Be sure to fly through the Eiffel Tower and the Arc de Triomphe along the way. That is the end. Obviously, we'll get a little bit more from Sarah when we get there in 37 miles, but we're going to need to then slow down. But pretty cool that we're landing at Charles Lindbergh's airport, the one he landed at after he did his transatlantic flight way back in the day. So if you are into aviation and you're looking at an interesting book on aviation history, I'm currently reading The Great Air Race. I think it's The Great Air Race. It might be The Greatest Air Race. But it's a history of a race in 1919, so before Charles Lindbergh, where they went and they crossed the U.S. from New York to San Francisco and back, and, vice versa. So they had legs going in both directions, and obviously they had to stop pretty frequently, so they had stops along the way, but without the things we have in modern aviation, the charts, the compasses, planes not made of cloth and wood, things like that. So you're looking for an interesting read that is reality-based as opposed to some sort of made-up fiction, and you're into aviation and enjoy flying and so forth, I'd suggest you take a look at it. So I'll see you in a little bit. Alright, so we are going to pull this back. That will start to slow us down as we're now coming over Paris. So definitely not as smooth as normal, but we're going to go over here, going to lower ourselves down, and we're going to then bring ourselves down here and get ourselves lower as we head into Le Bourget.
At our 5 o'clock, about 5 kilometers away, is central Paris, one of the most iconic skylines in the world. From up here, you can spot the Eiffel Tower, which was built in 1889 for the World's Fair and was originally intended to be a temporary structure. The city is a patchwork of grand boulevards, historic monuments, and the winding Seine River, which has inspired artists and poets for centuries. Paris is also home to the Arc de Triomphe, commissioned by Napoleon in 1806 to honor his victories, and the Louvre, which started as a fortress in the late 12th century before becoming the world's most visited museum. And let's not forget Notre Dame Cathedral. She's been through a lot, but she's still standing proud. Here's something. The city is sometimes called La Ville Lumière, or the City of Light, not just because it was one of the first cities to have street lighting, but also because it was a center of education and ideas during the Age of Enlightenment. That brings us to the end of our tour. Today, we soared over lighthouses, D-Day beaches, medieval towns, and the heart of France itself. Thanks for flying along. It's been a real treat sharing these stories from the sky.
Alright, so we're not too far outside of the city as we go. We're going to put the next thing down. We're going to put the wheels down. I'm not sure if it's there. We are a little bit away from a runway. So again, lots of train lines. The River Seine, I assume, going through town there. But yeah, that is, I think, where we want to be for the airport. So we are going to take the autopilot off, and we are going to get ourselves in line here for a landing. Yeah, and you wonder, 1927, what did the skyline look like? You know, all of those type of things. You know, as Lindbergh was coming in here, whoops, that's not what I want. So there's the runway. We are 1,200 feet above. I want to go super, super fast. But, you know, we need to get down. So I think we'll start turning. There we are. And we're about 4 nautical miles out. So, get ourselves kind of aligned here. You can see everything starting to fill in. The yellow, no, not much green. All the green is now gone. Man, we're going to speed up a little bit because, you know, we need to get ourselves aligned here. Bouncing around a good amount. 104 knots. 700 feet. But yeah, this will be pretty nice place. Next leg will be leaving France. Where will we go? If you haven't liked or subscribed, by the way, please consider doing that. Just lets you see things that you likely haven't seen. Just like me, hear things you aren't aware of. There's a big plane there. Off to the right. 500 feet. Back off the throttle again. But other than the buffeting around, feels okay. It's just definitely interesting. I mean, we don't have much wind, but things are flopping around a little bit, that's for sure. So, alright, turn this off. Slowly slough off speed here. Try to make sure we don't hit the stall range. Alright, a little harder than I would normally land there. 234. But we'll go off this way. We'll again turn this, get the flaps up, and we'll head over here where it looks like we've got a few hangars here and there. And we'll just pull off. We'll go to the Embraer location. Doesn't really matter where we end these. But we'll go from there. November 191 Mike Alpha landed at Le Bourget. So hopefully that will be what we need. I don't think anyone's going to respond to us, but we were told, hey, at least get that done. November 191 Mike Alpha taxiing to parking. Alright, it does show that we are landed. So again, that's a good thing. Cut this off. And we are in good shape as this starts to wind down. But really somewhat in the heart of Paris, which is a little crazy. I mean, it's on the north side of the city, kind of northeast a little bit. Yeah, I think there's a bunch of helicopter pads and stuff around, I think. But I see Versailles on the opposite side, Point Neely. Just looking for things. There's nothing listed as Notre Dame, but I'm sure that is because you can't land there. So I'm sure some of these are... There's like a BH4, BH5. It's like a route that basically follows the river. So again, I don't know if that's just a way to tour the city, and so it's a VFR route, and it's showing us that. But I'm hoping that we will get this to count for SayIntentions. If we don't, we don't. That's okay. But our next leg, next weekend, we'll be taking off from Paris. I know I had looked or happened to catch a glimpse the other day. There's a relatively long leg coming up. It might be the next one. I don't remember. So we're going to be done at least for one leg with the 200 or 300 nautical mile legs that we've been dealing with that don't take an insane amount of time, but they still take a good amount of time. But I hope you keep following along, and I will see you next time.